Hello, and welcome back to another segment of Chat with X.Commerce. We are your open conversation with the PMs, evangelists, and experts at X.Commerce. This week, our focus is on Magento. As usual, I'm your host, Jimmy, and I am the X.Commerce Community Manager. Today, we have with us Moses and Vinaya from Magento, and they're going to go over a quick demonstration how to create a Magento extension and how to place it on Magento Connect. Moses is the evangelist at Magento, and Vinay is the trainer at Magento. For those of you who have not tuned into our show before, we're not familiar with our format, here's a breakdown of our agenda. We're going to do a quick 15 to 20 minute demo from our experts. In today's case, Vinay will do a demonstration how to create a Magento extension.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. Hi, everyone. My name is Moses Ekizian. I've been a Magento evangelist since the days of beta. I know we are short in time and you guys are eager to have Vinay show you how to create and publish a simple Magento extension. But before then, let me do a quick intro about Magento Connect. Magento Connect is where developers can connect with the growing universe of Magento merchants to better understand merchants' needs and to offer extensions that meet those needs. The new and improved Magento Connect was launched in October of last year. With Magento Connect's new functionality and improved features, you'll have more ways to connect with merchants and boost your extension sales. Quick overview of some changes. The taxonomy was improved by classifying original categories into 6 main functional areas, making extensions easier to be found by merchants. Browsing and search was also improved. With improved sorting and filtering functionality, merchants can easily find your extensions. Magento Connect's enhanced listing make it easier to set yourself apart from the competition. You have the ability to have more detailed descriptions with the use of HTML tags and images in the detailed description area of your profile. The Magento Connect extension approval process was put in place to ensure that all submissions meet our guidelines, are accurate in representation, and be free of explicit and offensive materials. Every submission is reviewed for content and design criteria and measured against our guidelines. To ensure timely review and approval of our extension, we recommend that you follow the guidelines closely when creating, packaging, and submitting your extension to Magento Connect. Some key points to consider before creating or submitting your extension to Magento Connect. Magento Connect is designed as an extension marketplace, not as a general directory of complementary products and services. We do not allow services to be listed in Connect. Your extension and listing should not contain any hidden or malicious code, violate the privacy rights of the merchant or its customers, violate trademarks and copyrights of any third party, or include offensive and discriminatory language. Magento and its related logos are trademarked, so please use them as permitted. If your extension is approved after the submission, then it goes live and becomes available on Magento Connect. If not, we will notify by email with requested changes. Apply the changes and resubmit. You can find out more about Magento Connect at following locations. For questions or inquiries, you can reach out to the Magento Connect team at connect@magento.com. Now I would like to introduce you to my colleague Vinay Kopp, who will demo you how to create and publish an extension. Vinay?
Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in. Well, first I'd better switch to my screen. So I'm not presenter yet, could you just switch me over? Okay, here we go. So we're going to create an example extension and publish it on Magento Connect. Now, as a topic for our customization, we're going to use an example site. We're going to start with this sample site here. It's just regular Magento 1.7 install with the sample data. And the idea being we'll be developing a B2B store, so we want to force customers to be logged in before they are able to see any products in our catalog. So when I'm browsing here, currently I'm not logged in yet, so I'm still able to see this. So the idea is we're going to change that. So here we have my IDE and all of the different directories and files in the main root directory. The first thing we need to do when we create an extension for Magento is we need to create a file in app.etc modules that tells Magento our extension exists. So, by the way, the way this is going to work is I'm just going to be implementing the extension and talking about what I'm doing, so you can follow along. So first, we're going to create Magento is XML configuration based, and this file also is XML, no exception. Example B2B. That's going to be our module name. Example being something like a namespace that usually would be your company name, and B2B is my module name. Okay, here we go. Oops. So we have modules, example B2B. So now please note, the first character here needs to be uppercase. Magento is very explicit about which has, about casing in XML. It's all case sensitive. And yes, it should be active. And we need to specify a code pool. Right. So what are code pools? Code pools are a way the code in Magento is logically grouped. By the default install contains core, which is only for all the core code that Magento, the Magento core team created. We have app code community, which is the directory where any extension installed from Magento Connect should be installed. And we also have the local code pool, which is a directory called local, which doesn't exist currently, but that's not a problem. I'll just go ahead and create that. And any modules that are specific to one, to one specific instance of Magento, those should it should go into there. Now, the next thing we need to do, we need to create the extension directory, and for that we're going to use the namespace and the module name, and do the same thing Magento does. We just replace the underscore with a slash, which gives us our directory path. So now we have app code, local code pool, example B2B. And the first thing Magento does after loading a registered module is it looks for a file called config.xml in a subdirectory called etc. So we're going to create etc directory and a config.xml file. Okay. Now, what's next? Where do we begin? In Magento, we always have a lot of different ways customizations can be approached. So the first way would be, I'll say it differently. We are going to use event observers. Why? Because they are very compatible and very upgrade safe and easy to use. Magento uses a lot of events. You can think of events it's kind of like in JavaScript. Every time something happens where an event is triggered, we can hook into that flow of control of the program and modify what's happening. So the way we can register event observers is in the config.xml for our module here. So first of all, we want to go into the front-end node of our configuration because our customization should only apply to the front end of Magento, the customer-facing side, not the admin area. Front-end. So then we have front-end events. And the event in question we're going to observe is catalog product load after. So every time after a product's loaded, our observer will be called. And now our observer will have a class. And the class is in our module, example B2B. And the module, the class inside our module is observer. Now that's just a convention. We could call it something else, but we're going to stick to the convention unless we have a good reason to break it. Okay, then we also have to specify the method to use, and let's call that method check login state. That's just something we made up, and it shows a camel casing in order to confirm to the send coding guidelines here. So now, every time Magento loads a product, this observer will be triggered. And it's going to instantiate this class here. But what is this class actually? That doesn't look like a class name. Well, Magento needs to map the part in front of the slash to our module. So let's tell Magento how to do that. I'm going to tell Magento, yes, we're using models, and we're going to use the class group example B2B. And all classes inside our module, all model classes, will live in example B2B model. So this is a prefix a class prefix, which basically also corresponds to a directory structure. Example, B2B, and then a directory called model. The Magento autoloader takes care of resolving class names to model names. So we don't use PHP 5.3 or later namespaces. Instead, we use the old convention that the Zen Framework 1 also uses, which is to use folder names as namespaces, basically. So we're doing the same thing. So here I created the directory model, which corresponds to this class prefix, example B2B model. And now we need to create the class observer in there. And we call our class just like the file structure, example B2B model observer. If you're familiar with Zen Framework, you'll be familiar with this method of calling, this way of calling classes. And here we're going to implement our method, check login state. Now they have to be public, of course, since they're going to be called from outside. And what we're going to do is we're going to check if the customer is logged in first. So if mage so this will give me the customer instance, mage gets login customer session, and we just call is logged in. So if he's not logged in, then we want to redirect. And we're going to redirect to the target URL. And actually, Magento builds URLs dynamically because there are many configuration options that can influence those, and that's handled by the URL model core URL, which, by the way, corresponds to a class mage core model URL. So now I'm going to say the target URL is URL model get URL customer account login. That corresponds to my login page, and now I'm going to get the page controller, which handles the routing for the current request, which would be mage app get from controller get action. This is an instance of mage core controller front action. And now I can call action get response. Oops. Set redirect. Some of my typing is off today. Set redirect. And we want to send the headers immediately. So our change takes effect here. All right, now if we're logged in, it should start working. But actually all the config XML is cached, of course. Otherwise it would be rather slow. So if we go to System Cache Management, the first thing we need to do here is clear the configuration cache. So Magento will now load our configuration changes we did by creating the new module. Now I'm still logged out, and if I reload, I should be redirected to the login page. Oops, that didn't turn out well. So let's briefly check the log. Oh, there's nothing in there. So let's just check if my extension is actually being loaded here. For debugging, I'm going to turn off the config cache just to make that easier. Here we go. Yes, it is picking up my module. So it's got to be inside of this. And Actually, I'll just step through this here. Oh, damn it, I don't have the debug extension installed since the last Chrome upgrade. Hey guys, can we cut some of this out later on?
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy, you should cut this portion out. Could you double check, Vinay, if not logged in, is that?
Okay, so we're getting an error here, so there's got to be a bug, and luckily it's a classic, so we have a node forgotten here, so we also have to list the observers first that actually correspond to the catalog product load after event, and because there can be many observers listed here for different modules, we have to specify a couple of subnodes here before we can actually go ahead and add our own observer here. Okay, that looks better. Now let's refresh config cache again. Oh, I turned it off. Okay, let's go ahead and reload. Here we go. So far, so good. Now, if I log in, I should be able to see the products in again. Let's check. What was my test password? Here we go. Okay, so. And indeed, I'm able to view it again. Very good. If I log out again, I still can see the product listing, but if I go to the product detail page, I'm actually redirected to the customer account login page again. So, in order to also hide the product listing page, if I'm logged out, we actually have to use a different event because catalog product load after is only triggered after a single instance of a product is loaded. In order to use whenever multiples of a specific entities are loaded, we are talking about collection. So in this case, we have to use catalog product collection load after collection. Okay, now we should also have the redirect on this page. And yes, indeed. Now here we have one other little thing to debug, which is the session, the URL here. Basically, the URL model usually generates URLs in a way that they can be cached. And since session IDs shouldn't be cached, usually a template variable is inserted there, which will be replaced right before the page is rendered. So in this case, though, because we're setting it directly on the response object and telling it to send the headers, we need to take care that that's cleaned up ourselves. And we can do that easily by specifying, just by calling a specific method here on the URL model. Here we go, session var. Oops. I want to specify the target URL in there. So now, whenever I go to the category listing, because we're not redirecting to a different site, it's actually removed. If we would have been redirected to a page that's part of a hidden area, a secure area of Magento, so it requires a different host, with HTTPS, the session ID would be added to the URL. Okay, we could go ahead and make this more, add a message for the customer so he knows what's going on. We could add additional pages so we don't create, make sure not to create a redirect loop to the login page and so on. But for now, let's leave it at that and instead package our extension so we can upload it to Magento Connect. So to do so, you go to the system configuration and to Magento Connect package extensions. And if you already have defined created extensions, you can just simply reload them. And here we go. The name has to be exactly the node name you used in the config XML, in the registration file. Note the casing once again. has to match one-to-one here. Channel is community. Here you can specify the supported releases. So if you want to have your extension work only with Magento 1.5 and later, only check one of them. If you want to have a backward compatible extension, you can select both of them. Actually, yeah, so far so good. You have a summary of the module, a longer description, specify the license and the URL, specify a version, stability, and release notes for that specific release. You can specify the authors that should match your account on Magento Connect, and you also can specify dependencies. Now, if you specify different packages and extensions here, actually Magento will automatically install the dependent on packages when this package is installed. Most of the time, you will probably not need that. So under content, it actually gets more interesting. So first, you specify the type you want to add to your archive, extension archive. So I chose Magento local module, which corresponds to the directory at code local, to that core pool. And in there, I want to add the directory example B2B. Example B2B. Everything in there, so I'll set the type to recursive directory. I want to include everything. And we have one additional file we need to add, and that's a global configuration file, which global configuration is mapped to the etc directory here. So I want to add module example B2B XML, which is this one here. And that's just a single file. And once I'm done, I can simply save the data and create the package. And there we go. Now the extension is saved to the var directory. And I'll synchronize it here. Here we go. So because I chose both 1.5 and later and pre 1.5, I get actually two archives. Now the older version package is under var pair right here. And here's my old version of the extension, example B2B, with my version number. And in var connect, I have update the directory contents. Here we go. Delete the old version. Okay, and here we have the new version for 1.5 and later. Now to upload it, when you go to magentoconnect.com, log into your account, and go to the developer section, you can click add your new extension, and you have a number of fields to upload, to set here. So you have the title, brief description, and a detailed description. A limited set of HTML tags is allowed. Please check the extension guidelines Moses mentioned for details here. Now for the categories, you have to specify a number of categories where users will potentially find your extension. So I just selected administration and B2B. And you have to specify at least one locale that's supported. So in our case, we don't have any messages that are displayed, but I'll still just select English, United States. Before I submit it, I also want to specify that it's free, but I can't select it. And the reason I can't select it is I first have to specify versions where it actually works. So now that I specified some versions, I can click the is free node. So that's just something to be aware of. And once that's done, I can save it. And then I'll go to, I also have to specify some screenshots next. And that's just, just a little sample image here. And you also can specify versions. That's where you add a new version. So every time you add a new version, you specify the version number, the release stability, which should map to whatever you specified in the backend, a release notes title, and some release notes.
Yeah, nice, Moses. I think for version stability, you had alpha, so everyone make sure
yeah,
it's the
that's
same
right.
matching.
Thanks. Yeah, good point. Thank you. So, and then you just specify the versions you want to have this map to, valid for Magento. Now, when you continue to upload, there's one thing to be aware of once again, and that is if you want to have your extension be available for Magento 1. Up to 1.5, you have to choose the old package, which would be the package under pair. Here we go, this one. Magento will then automatically also create the new version of the package for other users. So if you only upload the new version under var Connect, your extension will only be usable and downloadable by any users who use the new version of it, 1.5 or older, or newer, Magento 1.5 or newer. And then you just click upload and save, and once you're ready, you can go ahead and submit it to review. And that's pretty much it for now, I think.